Hello and welcome to the Justice Factor. ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte says the ANC will win next year's general election with an increase in its majority. Should we believe her? Jesse Duarte joins me today to discuss the ANC and its election campaign. After that discussion, we'll give you, as usual, our winner and loser of the week. But first, I'm joined by the editor of Beeld newspaper, Adrian Basson, to discuss some of the big stories of the past week. Adrian, welcome to the show. I have to ask you about the big story, Jackie Selebi. What exactly did he do wrong, in your view?
Justice, yesterday morning, one of our readers phoned us at the Beeld newsroom and said that he just saw Jackie Selebi shopping in Pretoria at a shopping mall, walking very comfortably, speaking to some of the other people in the shop, buying his newspaper, getting into a very big luxury BMW car. Can
I ask you, what was his condition? What did the reader say? Was he being helped? I saw the picture in your newspaper. He seemed to be getting into the car by himself. But was he being helped?
No, he wasn't. He just had a driver who stayed in the car, but he was walking by himself, shopping, picking up the paper, paying at the till, etc. So he looked much better than he did in those pictures when he got into the ambulance more than a year ago, after he was sent to prison. And I think that is really what South Africans are asking tonight, is why is this man out of prison when he's obviously in a state now, when he was very ill, but he's now looks to be in a state healthy enough to be back in prison?
Well, if indeed, and the key thing for me when I read the minister's press release on the day on July 20 last year was that he said some of the conditions in the act are that he has to be terminally ill, has to be in a state where it's not going to go into remission. Does this look like a man who is terminally ill?
Absolutely not, and I think that's key. I think when I also looked at that speech, the minister referred to a palliative state, which means terminally ill. And you can understand that the state has that kind of compassion with prisoners really being in their last days, having the decency to let them die at home. So that was the reason behind his release. Now we're sitting in a quandary where the Department of Correctional Services told us today that there's no way he can go back to prison after being released on medical parole. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Reminds us of someone called Shabir Sheikh.
Yes.
Who was playing golf, also shopping, after being terminally ill.
But people, and a few of the people who've been criticizing your publication of the story, have been saying, well, did you want him to just die? What exactly is wrong with this? Correctional Services says he didn't violate his parole conditions.
No, we don't want him to die. In fact, I'm very glad to see that he's in a healthy state. It was quite a sad figure that he cut when he was sent to prison. The big question is about fairness and about equality before the law. Are some people more equal than others? That's the question tonight. When you speak to people like those doing research at the Justice Project at the University of the Witwatersrand, they will tell you that a lot of really terminally ill people are still in prison, are not being allowed to go home and die in peace with their families. The question is, why is Selebi out? Why is Shabir Sheikh out?
And why? Well, let's answer that question. Well, you raised the Shabir Sheikh. Is the Selebi matter similar to the Shabir Sheikh in any way?
Well, I think the fact that they are both politically very well connected is obviously a common factor. The fact that they are probably the two most prominent accusers and convicts of corruption in the past decade in South Africa. Shabir Sheikh having corrupted President Jacob Zuma, Jackie Selebi having been the chief of Interpol and taking bribes from a drug dealer. Those are not small little cases. Those are people that examples should be made of. So I think that's really the question tonight, and one that the state should answer, not by pointing to sections in the Correctional Service Act, but in the whole, is it right? It may be correct in terms of law, but is it the right thing to do?
It troubles me. I like living in a country which treats people, all people, prisoners, you and I who are out free, in a humane manner. But the point you raise about was this humane or was it gaming the system? That's the issue, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think, if the system allows someone who was, let's assume that Jackie Selebi was terminally ill and the doctors did declare him on, that he was on his deathbed, there should be surely in the system a space for someone like that when he recovers to return to prison. He was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. He served just more than 1 year. That can't be right. Can't be justice.
The word terminal means that he is going to die, but it doesn't define when. And therefore, have we fallen into a space here where where people can take advantage of that word that, well, I am terminal, but I'll live another 4, 5, 6 years, 7 years?
I suppose the system is open for abuse, but again, we don't see hundreds of probably poor prisoners who are really terminally ill being released on parole. But we see the Jackie Celebis and the Shabir Sheikhs of the world being released off parole. Is it because of their access to expensive lawyers to fight the system? Is it because of their political connectivity? One can't say for sure, but it looks like the system does privilege and advantage those with connections.
What does this say to the men and women in the street out there?
I think it says that you know, if you're sentenced to corruption, and I'm scared that it says corruption is not such a serious offense. I'm scared that it says to be the police chief and to take bribes from a drug lord means you can only spend a year in prison. Because if that's the message that's going out there, we are losing the war against corruption.
You had a busy week last week, Adrian Basson. Your paper exposed a story in Tshwane saying that the municipality wants to pay 35 million rand to Beyonce, the singer Beyonce, to our readers who don't follow these things. Beyonce is a famous American pop singer, for her to come and perform at the concert. Yeah. They've denied that. They said, no, it was just an example. Was it?
No, that's not true. So our reporter in the Tshwane Metro Council obtained the documents submitted to council to approve the Dino King Festival, as it will be called.
The mayor of Tshwane, Sputla Ramokgopa, says no. In the document, they refer to, there's singers of the caliber of.
No, that's not true, Justice. And we published those documents in our paper and on our website last week. There's at least 5 instances in the documentation where Beyonce is named as the key success factor, those are the words, to the Dino King Festival. We spoke to the people at Big Concerts who organizes all these big pop shows. They tell us that Beyonce doesn't leave her home for less than 35 million rand. The Metro Council has approved 45 million rand. They want to host a Glastonbury type of event outside Tshwane. That's all good and well. The question is, why bring out Beyonce for a 20-year of democracy festival? Isn't our own artists like Zahara and Lyra and HHP good enough? And secondly, spending this massive amount of money, a municipality that's in financial trouble, is that right? And then thirdly, obviously the issue of Beyonce's name is clear. It's in black and white. So now the mayor was a bit creative with the truth in that instance.
I hope to have him here next week. President Jacob Zuma, just very briefly, we've run out of time, but President Zuma, named again by one of the people who are being charged at over the Waterkloof Air Force Base landing of the Gupta plane. Where is this story going to go, Adrian Basson?
I think the most significant things of the revelations last week that we published in Beeld was that Christine Anderson, Lieutenant Colonel Christine Anderson, said for the first time under oath that number 1 is indeed the way they refer to the state president in telephone conversations. They never mention him by name, but they refer to number 1. And secondly, that she recalls a telephone conversation she had with Bruce Kolwane, the former head of state protocol, in which he told her a number of details, including that he'd just come from a visit with President Zuma, in which the president asked him about the landing.
Should the presidency respond?
They should. I think the presidency can't just deny a blanket denial. They must say, you know, Kolwane lied about this, and that. The president never met him. There was never any discussions. Because there's now so much detail out there, I don't think a blanket denial is good enough.
Adrian Basson, thanks so much, and congratulations on your editorship of Beeld.
Thank you, Justice. Thank you.
After the break, we asked Jesse Duarte if President Zuma will be the face of the ANC's election campaign.
News that moves. ENCA.com.